Good day, everyone. Welcome to Science for High School with Merivit Education Center. This series is for M.2. In this lesson, you will learn about the mechanisms involved in respiration during inhalation and exhalation. Furthermore, you will learn about the different parts of the respiratory tract, including their names and functions. The human respiratory system is one of the vital organ systems in the body. This is due to the fact that it is responsible for breathing and respiration, which ensures the balance of concentration between gases coming in and out of the body. The respiratory system has two distinct functions. The primary or main function is for pulmonary ventilation, where inhalation and exhalation takes place, and external respiration, or the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The secondary function is for speech production and for the sense of smell. The respiratory tract can be divided into two divisions: the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. Each division has different parts with specialized functions for respiration. The upper respiratory tract is the primary part, which allows the filtration, purification, and humidification of air before going down into the lungs. This tract has the following parts: the nostrils, nasal cavity, nasal sinuses, oral cavity, the pharynx, and its divisions: the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, the laryngopharynx, and the last part, which is the larynx. The lower respiratory tract is made up of the following parts: the trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, the alveoli, or also known as the air sacs, the main organ for respiration, the lungs, and the diaphragm, which aids in respiration. The nostrils are the initial part of the nasal pathway, which is the main entrance of air into the body. It is made up of tiny hair-like structures called the cilia, which filters the air as we breathe. The air then enters the nasal cavity, the inner part of the nose. It is filled with mucous membrane, allowing the nose to stay moist. Structures within the cavity regulates the flow of air and the particles it contains. Air is also warmed up in this region. The oral cavity refers to the mouth, and it is the second external opening in which air can enter into the respiratory tract. It means that we can breathe using our mouth, but the drawback is that the air is not filtered out. The pharynx, also known as the throat, is the cone-shaped passageway from the nasal and oral cavity to the larynx. The pharynx serves both respiratory and digestive functions, since air and food passes into this area. The pharynx consists of three divisions: the nasopharynx, which connects the nasal cavity to the throat. Next is the oropharynx, which begins at the back of the mouth to the throat. Last is the laryngopharynx, which stretches out from the epiglottis to the esophagus. It functions on regulating the passage of air into the lungs and food into the esophagus. The epiglottis is an accessory organ which plays a beneficial role in respiration. It is made up of a flap of cartilage which covers the trachea during eating, preventing food to enter the trachea. The epiglottis opens up during breathing, allowing air to flow down the lower respiratory tract. The larynx is the organ responsible for speech and sound production. When air moves along the larynx, it causes several vibrations in the vocal cords, producing sound. So let's have a short review on some parts of the upper respiratory tract. Identify the names of each part as indicated by each number. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Number 1 is excellent, the nasal cavity. Number 2 is fantastic, the pharynx. Number 3 is wonderful, the nostrils. Number 4 is good job, larynx. And number 5 is the oral cavity. Good job. The first part of the lower respiratory tract is the trachea. It is also known as the windpipe. It is a system of tubes that carries air down into the lungs. It helps moistens and warms the air while it passes into the lungs. The trachea is supported by specialized C-shaped cartilages, which prevents it from collapsing. The air from the trachea is then split up into the bronchi, the main passageway into the lungs. This pulmonary bronchi has 3 main parts, namely the large primary bronchi, which splits the trachea, the secondary bronchi, which splits up the primary bronchi into 3 divisions, and the tertiary bronchi, which leads to smaller tubes, the bronchioles. The bronchi is then extended out into much smaller tube-like branches called the bronchioles. Its main function is to ensure the equal supply and distribution of air into the alveoli or air sacs. The main organ for respiration are the lungs. These are sponge-like dome structure in the respiratory tract, enabling pulmonary ventilation. It has 2 divisions, the right and the left lung. The right lung has 3 lobes compared with the left lung that has 2 lobes. The left lung has a cardiac notch for the heart. Diaphragm is a special band of muscle below the chest cavity. The main function of the diaphragm is to control its volume by means of contracting and relaxing during breathing. Also, due to its constant contraction and relaxation, it equalizes the amount of pressure in the chest and in the lungs. The alveoli are tiny clumps located inside the lungs. They are also known as the air sacs, which are responsible for gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide. During inhalation, the lungs are filled with air, as well as the alveoli, which is rich in oxygen. The capillaries contain deoxygenated blood, or blood rich in carbon dioxide. The oxygen then diffuses into the walls of the capillaries and exchanges with CO2. Carbon dioxide is then expelled in the lungs out of the body through exhalation. The process of oxygen exchange is shown in this diagram. The process of carbon dioxide exchange is shown in this diagram. During breathing, certain conditions happen with the lungs and the diaphragm. In inhalation, the lungs are filled with air, so it expands and becomes bigger. As a result, the diaphragm contracts, giving much space for the chest to expand. The opposite happens during exhalation. Now let's see the comparison between them. Let's do this quick activity. Follow what I say. Put your hands on your chest. take a deep breath, inhale, and exhale. What did you notice? Can you explain what happened? Now, this time, do what I say. Put one hand on your chest and the other hand in your diaphragm. Now, take a deep breath. Can you describe what happened? During inhalation, the lungs expand since air fills it up. And when air is exhaled out, the lungs relaxes back. The diaphragm also moves simultaneously with the lungs and the chest during breathing. It contracts during inhalation and relaxes back upon exhaling air. Both organs complement each other, creating a vital purpose in pulmonary ventilation. This ends the lesson about the respiratory system. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.